Hi everybody. I haven't made a video in a couple of days. Well, I don't know, a week or so, I guess. But I'm subscribed to a lot of people's channels and ex-JWs. I talk to current JWs. Lots of people I talk to. There's a couple things that are on my mind. First is this. There is a person, you probably know who I'm talking about, the current, so-called current JW that has been making videos. I want to say this. He was talking about the numbers of current JWs and stuff, you know, about the numbers and people that showed up for the memorial and all this. Well, I want to explain something. In 2019, the numbers that came out were for 2018. The person that made a video was saying that the numbers that they added up in 2018 were for 2017, but that's not how it works. January of their fiscal year ends, I think in June or September or something like that, so they add up from a different time of the year. But that being said, the numbers that came out in January of 2019 are the numbers for 2018. So, that person is a year behind. They don't understand how to figure it out. But this is how it is. When my cats are playing, so you go to the Kingdom Hall, and they count the publishers that show up for the meetings. So you figure you got 100 publishers in your hall. I know some halls only have 30, but you know, when I was in there, I'd say, well, okay, they said there was 100. So they count these every week and they post them on a board. And then at the end of the month, they turn those numbers in. Well, first of all, the person that takes the numbers, who is assigned to count the people in the hall, writes the numbers down, puts them on the board, and then there'll be somebody else that comes behind them and alters the number that they put on the board. That's been seen happening. That's known to happen. So at the end of the year, they count up how many publishers there are in a hall, and then they add them together for every hall in the country and every hall in the nation, and then every hall, all the halls in the world, right? And they add them up. Well, they come up with the numbers that were published. I went over these numbers. I gave you the most current numbers that were published. The ones that went up in January. The ones that are posted on jw.org. I didn't make the numbers up. I went by what they wrote down and what their grand totals were on their website. Now, I asked one of my friends who's a current JW, male, and I asked him, I says, when they count people that show up at the memorial, who are they counting? And he said that they are counting every man, woman, child, infant that shows up. They're counting even the babies. Every living soul that's in that hall, they count for the memorial. So they're not counting those people at any other time. So if you take the number of people that show up for the memorial, the ones that they count, and you count and you subtract the number of publishers they say they have, that comes out to around 2 people for every publisher. So if you want to put it that way, what they're doing is they're counting all their family. So there's so many publishers, and then there's twice as many added all together. So if you take a national average, so there's, most people have 2.3 kids or whatever in a family, you know, there's really nobody showing up for the memorial that aren't there all the time anyway. Because if you're just going to count publishers and then you count everybody that's in the hall for the memorial, you're counting the publishers and their children that aren't publishers. There's not very many people that are, the numbers for this year, that came out this year for last year, if you look at the numbers, there's like exactly twice as many that showed up for the memorial that they counted as there is normally. So that just means that they're counting their kids. If they're single brothers and sisters, there's a family somewhere that has more kids than that's the normal average. So instead of 2.3 kids, they got 4 kids or 5 kids, which sounds pretty normal to me. I mean, when I was a Jehovah's Witness, they had people that had 6 or 8 kids. Most families had more than 2. I mean, my family only had me and my brother, which 1 or 2 kids was rare. Usually there was more kids in a family than that. 2 is pretty normal, but there are lots of families that had 6 and 8 kids. I knew a bunch of them. I mean, there was, that I can remember, 3 families for sure that had 8 kids. So if the average is 2.3 kids, well, they made up the difference, you know. So look at the numbers yourself. They're posted on jw.org. Put in 2018 grand total, grand totals, and it'll come right up. And you can punch in any year, you know, 2016, 2015, 2014, 13, 12, whatever, and you push in the grand totals, and the first thing that comes up is totals per country or totals per world. You know, you can look at them both ways. But when I looked at the numbers this year, I was like, that's almost exactly twice as many. So if they're counting men, women, children, and babies, well, that sounds about right. Some of them aren't baptized, or they're not publishers, so they don't normally count them, but, you know, and I'm like, oh, man, no way is there 11 million people that only show up for the memorial and don't go any other time of the year. No way. No. Now, every single video recording that I've seen anywhere, when they go into the Kingdom Hall for during a regular meeting, there are more empty seats than there are people in there. Every one of them I've seen. Back in the 70s, they had rented the local town city hall, auditoriums. They call it a civic center where I live. But that held about 5,000-6,000 people. That was always wall to wall. I mean, there was people in almost every seat. There were even people sitting in hallways, and that's with people. That's also with people sitting at contribution boxes and guarding doors and cooking, doing security work. You name it. There were people everywhere. But the main floor of people that weren't volunteering somewhere else, they had, you know, almost all the seats full. And in the last few years, the pictures that I've seen, the videos that I've seen of most of the assemblies everywhere, they were just sparse. There were like hardly anybody there. I mean, there were maybe a third of the seats filled. I went to an assembly 1983 in Houston, Texas, in the Houston Astrodome. 73,000 witnesses. You know, the people that go to assemblies are mostly witnesses. You know, I'm sure a few people show up that were invited just to go look and experience the thing, but most of them were witnesses. And 73,000 people in the Astrodome. And they also had the Checkerdome, the Metrodome, the Astrodome, and there was another one too. I can't remember the name of it, but they had a telephone hookup between the different domes around the country. And talk about witnesses, man. They just, there was so many. It was like, wow, you know, to be in a crowd that big of like people, you know, it was amazing. But these days, this last year, this last year, I paid close attention to the assemblies. People that were going to assemblies, I would ask them, how many people were there? How many seats were empty versus full? You know, I didn't ask for numbers. I just said that. And then, how many people were baptized? And what I noticed was this. The one assembly, they barricaded off part of the auditorium so people wouldn't even sit in certain sections, and they crowded them all in one part of it because they didn't even have enough people to fill the place. So they barricaded them all in a smaller area to make them look more packed in. But a lot of the auditorium for the assembly hall, wherever it was empty. They didn't even use it. And that wasn't the only one that I heard that way. There were others that they said right out that there weren't very many people there. The baptism numbers. When I was baptized in 81, it was an assembly of about, I'd say about 5,000 to 7,000. I don't remember the exact numbers. I think it was a little over 5,000 people. And there was like 220 of us that were baptized. I mean, a lot. And this last year, when I'm listening, they had assemblies that were 5,000 people, but only 44 got baptized, or 11. One assembly, they only had 4 people baptized. Now that is a far cry from 200 and some, or 300 and some, that were baptized at assemblies years ago. When baptism rates drop from triple digits down into low double digits, well, that is a big, huge difference. And then you turn around and these people are saying things like, oh, there was so many baptized this year, and our numbers are growing, and They haven't stopped and looked and paid attention. They haven't at all. And other people see it. But they are so controlled that they can be told over and over and over again, we're growing, we're progressing, we're doing good, you get this whole pep talk thing. It's just like a corporate convention. So you go and they charge you up and they say, we're doing great, we got to do more, we got to get out there, blah, blah. And they just make these people's self-esteem just go right through the roof. Well, it's the same thing that they do to Jehovah's Witnesses. It's a corporate convention. And they're trying to, it's like a big pep rally. We got more, we're doing so good, you gotta, we need to get out there more, we need to do twice what we're doing, we can go, and it's just, all a self-esteem rush to get these people to go out there and do more and more and more and more. By the time they leave a convention, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna do this and that, oh my God, it just goes on, and, come on. When a person that is not a Jehovah's Witness goes and looks at those numbers, they notice right away those things like the baptism rates are down, the attendance is down in the kingdom halls and the conventions. I asked that Jehovah's Witness friend of mine, the male friend of mine I talked to, I asked him, I says, because I've talked to people all over the world, Sweden, Norway, Germany, Australia, Africa, Canada, the United States, there was a couple other places too, but from all over, whenever I talk to them, I ask them, what is the state of the organization there? Are there more? Are there less? When you go to a kingdom hall, are there more seats empty or full? Or, how do you see that when you go in there and what's going on? And that person in the United States that I talked to, that the male that I talked to, he said, well, I can't really tell you. And I was like, why? He says, well, because they were selling our halls, and so there's 3 or 4 congregations that now meet in a school gymnasium. So I can't really tell you if there's more seats empty or full, because it's hard to tell, because the gymnasium's really big and we're just kind of spread out in there, and we're not really familiar with it, so I can't really tell you if there's more or less of us. I don't know. And I was like, what? You don't even have a kingdom hall? They took 4 kingdom halls and got rid of them, and they make them all meet in a school gymnasium? Are you kidding me? Is that not a sign of a corporation in trouble? Hello? Now, I've talked to people in the United States here and asked them those questions that I ask everybody I talk to. And they tell me that they watched the Australian Royal Commission and it made them notice new things that they didn't really notice before, and they felt like they were starting to wake up to certain things, and they went and talked to their friends at the Kingdom Hall and realized that those people were waking up to certain things. And pretty soon they found out that through talking to this person and that person, that like 40% of their congregation was waking up. they're to the point where they realize that they're waking up, because that's the only way that you can describe it, is a waking up, awake from a slumber, waking up from sleep. It's just exactly like that. That's what happens. It's exactly like waking up. And so they start saying that they're starting to wake up. And they are starting, because through conversation you can tell that they still are indoctrinated and they still do see things a certain way, but there's things that they've noticed that they just don't accept anymore, and they know it's not true. So the only follow through in that is if they know that what they've been told in that area is not true, then they start looking at other things and realize that there's more and more and more that they are being told that isn't true. And pretty soon you have to outright admit to yourself that it can't possibly be the truth, because there's so many things that they're telling us that aren't true. You can't call something that isn't true the truth. It just doesn't work. When you realize that you're being lied to and that they're misleading you, you can't call it the truth anymore. Now, when you talk to some of them that are in the process of waking up, they know that they really can't call it the truth anymore. And the first thing that happens is, this is what they say: I'm not donating any more money to the organization. No, I can't support that. Their conscience starts to bother them about supporting an organization that's lying to them. So then what happens is, they're only giving the congregation enough money to pay the bills, to keep the Kingdom Hall open, so that they can go and see their friends. So it becomes a social club and not so much a religion anymore, because almost half of them are waking up, and they will go to door, but they're not there to gain any new converts, because they don't want to pull people into a religion that they aren't comfortable even calling the truth anymore. So they're in the process of waking up. So those things just happen as you go. And I've talked to people in congregations in England, that their congregations are starting to wake up. So I have this theory, and spread this around a little bit. If everybody that is going to the Kingdom Halls and calling themselves an active publisher just so they can spend time with their friends, if all of them up and walked out in one day, just decided, okay, this is the last time we're going to come, next week we're not coming anymore. If they all walked away, there would be so many gone that the elders couldn't do anything about it. And there'd be so few people left, there'd be nobody to shun you. And the organization would fall almost overnight. My thing is, everybody gets to a point that you can't call it the truth anymore when you find out that they're hiding things from you on purpose. Because a lie is still a lie. Even if it's a lie of omission, it's still a lie. And if they're lying to you, they're not truthful, so you can't call it the truth. So I just want to say, I challenge everybody out there that is waking up or is awake and still hanging around there because they don't want to be shunned by their friends and family. If they would all get together and say, hey, this is our last meeting, we're not coming anymore. If all of them walked away, there'd be nobody left to shun them. Nobody left to try to force them to stay. And if that happened, the ones that were still in there would be looking around going, oh man, what just happened? And boom, they'd start waking up. It'd be like the domino effect. Just wait a couple of months. They'll leave too. You know? But don't stick around and continue to call yourself a publisher of an organization that you know isn't the truth anymore, and you're not donating to the organization because you don't agree with what they say. If you don't agree with it and you don't support it, leave. There's one thing that people are afraid of. One thing. They are afraid of the consequences placed upon them by men. Because nowhere in the Bible does it say that you should treat people that leave any differently than you would a normal worldly person. So if you can go to the grocery store and you can go up to a worldly person and say, oh, have a good day, I hope your day goes well, good to see you, I run into here all the time. If you can do that to somebody that is not a Jehovah's Witness, then you can do that to your own family members that don't believe as you do. Don't treat them worse than a worldly person, because the Bible says you treat them just like you would treat a worldly person. So if you would stop and help them with a flat tire, or drive them to get their medicine, or be kind to them when they're sick, or if the neighbor's wife dies, you go over there and bring the husband some food to help console him, and you do all these nice things for your neighbors, then you can do the exact same thing to your family members that leave, instead of treating them like they're dead. You know, get your act together, man. You're either going to follow what the Bible says or you're not. And those consequences of shunning and people treating you like you're dead, all that stuff, are consequences placed on you by men. Because men are the one that are dictating to you this so-called doctrine that you got to follow. But God doesn't do that to people. God's pretty... The Bible says God is not partial. So he doesn't care where you live or how you live or what your house looks like or how you dress. That doesn't matter to him. It doesn't matter if you wear a suit or a sweatshirt. It doesn't matter if you wear sandals or Louis Vuittons. You know, God doesn't care. He cares about what's inside of us and how we feel about him and how well we follow Christ's commands. They asked Jesus, what is the greatest command? And he says you should love God with all your heart and all your soul. That's what's important. And the other is to love your neighbor as yourself. And if you love your neighbor as yourself, it doesn't mean only people that go to the same church you do. That means everybody. That means your neighbors, your people in your neighborhood, people in your town, people in your country, people who aren't in your country, people that don't think like you do. Everybody. Love everybody. Because love Love. That means everything. We should love each other for being the human being that they are. No matter how different they are, how different they think, how different they worship, whatever. Because, see, if you love God and follow Christ's commands, that's what matters. And it's real easy to see in your daily doings. It's real easy to see the people that actually follow Christ's commands versus the people that don't. It's evident in what they do, how they treat people, what they say to people, everything. And when Christ and God, who is love, is in your soul and you're filled with the Holy Spirit and full of love, you don't treat people badly. You don't say one thing and do something else. So if you love everybody, wonderful things happen in the world. Wonderful things. If you just love people, no matter how they dress, what color they are, what language they speak, how they do this or how they do that, just love them. Because life is hard for everybody. Everybody has their own problems. Everybody's problems are different. And you gotta love people. You gotta stick with people. We're human beings. Don't look at somebody as Jehovah's Witness, Catholic, Protestant, Seventh-day Adventists. Don't look at them as different because of that, and then not even care about them because there's something else. No, you love them for being a human being. Love them because they love God. Love them because they follow Christ, no matter what church they go to. Because God's going to judge us on who we are, how we treat others, and the fruit that we bear. And like I said, everybody out here in this community can look at someone and recognize a true follower of Christ versus not a true follower of Christ. Because you know, people that live that way and always treat people that way are that way. But you get some that say that they are, but they don't live that way and they don't treat people that way. Big difference. Big difference. And the reputation that you have, if you have a reputation for being a loving, kind, hearted person and good to everybody versus a reputation of always trash talking other people and cutting them down for how they live or how they dress or how they talk or any of that, that's not the kind of fruit that we're supposed to bear. And you can notice that. And y'all know what I'm talking about. You know? Do not ever judge somebody else on how you think they should do something. Because remember, I don't remember where that verse was exactly. I'm not good at remembering this certain verse, you know, but I remember what's in there. But it says that you're not supposed to judge someone else's slave. You know, so if these people are worshiping a certain way, well, let God take care of that. Let God do the judging on that person. You know, love them. You know, life is hard. Pray for those people. Support them. Be kind. You know, and notice the way that people talk about other people, because even if they're strong in their words, people will still come back and say, you know, that person says a whole bunch of this or that, but they are one of the nicest, kindest people that I know. I mean, they're good people. You know, and that's what matters. Because if you are following Christ, then people will look at you and say that person has a good heart, and they're good, and they're kind. and they're godly, and they live their life the way Christ says we're supposed to live our life. Those people. But the ones that say that, you know, I work for Christ and Christ sent me here to do this, but then they trash talk people and talk bad about people all over what religion you are, that's not right. Because, see, God judges us for more than what building we worship Him in. You know, He's not partial, so don't let that bother you. Because, see, under the new covenant, those laws are written in our hearts and in our minds, where people don't have to teach you that anymore. You know, if you just live your life that way, and that's who you are, it's because those laws are written on your heart and in your mind, and you know that that's the right way to be. Nobody has to tell you, you know, you need to live your life this way, because it's just something that you normally do. It's the way you live, you know. But you've seen the opposite side of the coin, though, of people that profess to be followers of Christ and doing Christ's work, but are mean to other people and talk bad about them and call them names and attack them personally about where they live and how they dress and the way they talk and all that. I'm sorry, but when you have Christ living in you, that's just not the way that you do. That's not the way that you are. You know, and you can look at people. I don't care if they call themselves an atheist. They can still be living a life just like Christ wants us to live, because it's written in their hearts and in their minds. That's the way they live. That's how they treat other people. It's normal for them to do that because it's written in their hearts and in their minds. You know, don't prejudge people, you know, just because they're this or just because they're that. You know, because those aren't the kinds of things that make a person good or not. You know, you're not gonna die in Armageddon just because you don't belong to someone's church. No, you're not gonna die in Armageddon just because you dress a certain way or wear a suit on YouTube. It just, that's not the way it is. But anyway, I could go on, and I'm gonna wind up making this video an hour long. And that's not, you know, what I'm trying to do. Just want you to understand that the person that was on YouTube talking about all these unactive, disassociated, disfellowship people that find it only necessary to go to the memorial once a year and they don't do anything else, well, that person didn't even add up the numbers right. It didn't even dawn on him that their people are counted differently for a meeting than they are for the memorial. They're counting men, women, children, and babies. Normally, babies aren't counted. I'm sorry, but they are for the memorial. So those numbers are a little deceptive. It's not, the number isn't the true reflection on actually what it means. You have to know how they count them in order for them to come up with that number. You can't just assume. And that person was quoting numbers and saying things on assumptions and not even thinking about how it's actually done. So, you know, and we don't call people bad things just because they don't live the way you do or worship the same way you do. You need to commend people. You know, if they're living like Christ commanded and they love God, then you need to say, may God bless you. May God continue to bless you. Because evidently you're blessed. You know, some people don't realize that they are living a God-blessed life when they really are. You know, people are their own worst critic, you know. Always feel bad about, you know what your own weaknesses and mistakes are, but other people see you as a good person. So, you know, may God continue to bless you because Christ is in your heart. If you live your life as Christ commands and you love God with all your heart, good for you. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.